9 years. 9 years ago. If you want to get technical with it, we could say 9 years ago, yesterday was the day that well, Lemmy Kilmeister, aka Dad, left the planet. It's kind of weird, kind of crazy. To me, is one of those guys who I was like, man, I always felt like Lemmy's immortal. Like, how's that? How's that happen? What's up, Steve Mitchum? I'm like, it didn't seem right. Still doesn't seem right. I ain't go. It was just kind of like, it's weird, man. It's almost like it's fake news. It almost like it just didn't make sense. I didn't understand it. It's just to me it's just like one of those things where he was like a guarantee in life. You know, they say like there's a few guarantees in life, taxes, death. To me, that was one of them. That was one of them. What's up, Keely Chow? How you doing, sir? And it's crazy because I've had Lemmy and Motorhead especially be dominant and instrumental in my life for I'd say 75% of my life, like 70. So I'm 37, so I'd say 20 something years overall so far. So yeah, dominant in my life, and I remember the moment when I first heard the music. I remember the first album. I remember Life Memories, Summer Memories. There's a lot of history there, and you know what? I was talking with a buddy of mine, and I was just like, "We should talk about it." You know what? Just the two of us. We kind of kept like a show on the super down low, and then we just kind of surprise you all with it, and that's it. That's it. So you know what? We're having some fun with it tonight. I think it's super necessary. How you feel about that 70s?
Oh, no, that's it's great. It's a really nice thing to do, mate. Yeah, I can't believe it's been so long since you lost your father, Lemmy. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's weird.
it's really
Kind of weird.
been 9 years. That's that's kind of unbelievable. It actually makes me feel quite old. Also, hearing you're only 37 makes me feel quite old, of course. But
You know, it's weird. It really is like it. I when you look back, I must because so I've had Motorhead, the music of Motorhead, in my life for at least I'd say 22 or 23 years. So you're talking, yeah, that's definitely yeah. I'm trying to think. I'm trying. I gotta get. I'm gonna
well, it's
get.
been a
I'm gonna
while.
get a
It's
live.
been
I'm
a
gonna get a
while.
live calculator.
It's yeah, I
And
know what you mean. But for me, I mean, I was became aware of them almost immediately when they formed, and was I was still a young teenager and heavily into them, and had been aware of Hawkwind before, of course, with
mhm.
Lemmy and bass and singing Silver Machine and for Hawkwind and stuff like that. So I guess it's for me, it's been like I don't know, 50 years or something, 50 or more, 50
Mhm.
more or more years of Lemmy. It's it's weird because he's one of these guys. Don't you think that he was immortal? Like he would all.
Yeah.
Well, like
Just
I
like
never.
I said, I was like, it was one of those things where it just like it felt like it was just one of those guarantees of life. It felt like a thing that was just always there and was gonna always be there.
Yeah, I mean, it's as he said it himself once when he went for some reason he was supposed to get a blood transfusion and they couldn't give him pure blood. He said because he had so much toxins in his blood it would have killed him. It's like this is a man that could have survived in the apocalypse, nuclear apocalypse. It's weird.
Bombs could have dropped on him and he would have
Yeah,
lived through them. It's one of those things.
yeah,
He like I feel like when Charlie Sheen was talking about his old by winning phase, this was one of those things where I was just like, well, hot dog, dude. Maybe even Charlie Sheen maybe could not have done as much by winning as Lemmy did. I'm just saying, like it was on another level. It was on another level. Let's acknowledge some of our faces here. What's up, Penny? How you doing? Tim Hayes, TZ Burton. How you doing? I saw where was he? Where was he? Humor and Waffles. Hey all. Not sure who Lemmy is, and now I'm afraid to ask, do I think that loud? You can think whatever you want, man. we'll talk about it. And you'll get to learn the E True Hollywood story without all the flashy presentation. It's just really just two dudes who are going to talk about them. That's what
Mm,
we're here to do on
yeah.
our terms is what we're doing. So
Happy memories, indeed.
yeah. Oh God, so many fond memories. So I guess I'll start with my very first
Hmm.
Motorhead memory. So there's back in the PS2 days. Well, actually, you know what? I had to get technical with it. I first heard it, even though I didn't know I was hearing it, was when the Attitude Era WWF was huge. Like,
Ah.
and you had Triple H, have the game song. I didn't know, no, it was Motorhead. To me, that was just like a song, just for Triple H type of thing.
Hmm.
And then WrestleMania happened in 2001. And then all of a sudden they say play by like the Motorhead actually played at the show, and now playing
Well,
Motorhead
yeah.
performed at WrestleMania. I'm like, oh, that's a band that actually sings that. I thought it was just some guy. I was just like, oh, that's interesting.
It's a
Okay,
real band. Yeah.
it's a real band,
I'd
and
forgotten they performed at that. Yeah.
yeah, they
Yeah.
did.
Line in the
And
Sand, was it? Or
the game. Is the song that they did for Triple H called "The Game" because Triple
oh
H
yeah,
was a
sorry,
huge
the
fan.
game. Yeah, actually, I wasn't a big wrestling guy, but I think they also did a song "Line in the Sand," which was on something to do with WWE. But
They did quite a few promos with WWE. They did that one. They did one right around the time the Motorizer album was out as well in 2008.
yeah,
They did like 3 or 4 different types of promos with Vince and company
yeah,
at
the
the
game was
time.
2001 era, wasn't it? Round about then. Or,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So when I heard the song, I saw the guys. Oh, that's cool. It's a band. It's actual band plays a song. I still don't really like think anything too much of it, other than oh, hey, that's cool. So that was the
Mm.
unofficial moment. But then there was the official moment. Was and this is as super normie as it gets, but the normie trail led me down to where we are now as far as normie trail. So I was hooked on Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I think it was 2. I think it was 2. Yeah, it was 2. And the song Ace of Spades was on the game. And I remember the Tony Hawk game had a really good soundtrack. It had a really good soundtrack. I was like, oh, there's a bunch of cool songs. I had learned about
Mm.
a bunch of other bands at the time. I learned about Super Joint Ritual, which has Phil Anselmo in there. I learned about who In Flames were before they really neutered their sound. And I saw Motorhead. I saw that Ace of Spades song, and I became obsessed with it. I think maybe even overly obsessed. You want to know how obsessed I became when I would play that game? I turned off the entire soundtrack, but kept it on that one song, and that was the only song. It was downright deranged. It was
Mm.
downright deranged. I was like, and before you know it, I was playing for 2-3 hours straight, and that was the only song I heard.
Yeah.
To me, it was the only song that mattered. Even though that soundtrack was good, it had a lot of other great tunes that I like. There's so many good tunes, but I omitted it strictly for Motorhead. And
Indeed.
then and then it was 2004. I had graduated, I think it was sophomore year. I'd start hanging out with a new group of friends at the time, and one of them was playing this album. I'm like, oh, that's Motorhead. I'm like, I could tell it because that Lemmy guy, he's got a really distinct voice. You can't mistake it anywhere. And kept hearing this one song. I heard it in a certain way. I thought, oh, that's really weird. I don't know why you do that to someone, but okay. And so what that I started singing it out loud, even though I thought it was weird. But there's a song, and he was saying, "Snipe my love, snipe my love." I was like, and then one of my buddies, his name was Ryan. He's like, "Why are you saying snipe my love?" I was like,
Mm.
what? Isn't that what he's saying? He's like, no, it's snake bite love. I was like,
Well, it
oh,
wasn't the easiest thing to decipher, especially as you're American and Lemmy's decidedly English with an English
yeah.
accent. Yeah, and he's kind of like this, you know. So, yeah, for me, it was peak. Like 76 to 1980 was my one of my first peak uh, periods of really being like thinking about nothing but music, being into
Mhm.
music, starting going to gigs and having the money to go to concerts and buy records, not very many, but and recording stuff on the cassette recorder. So Motorhead were right in that peak period. They were a
Mhm.
huge component of my listening at that point, and then later, obviously. But that period, it was so exciting because you had heavy stuff, you had punk, Motorhead were all over that scene, and so I did hear the first single, Louie Louie, which was slightly rougher than what we got after, but it was really Overkill was the first one, and the single Overkill, the single 70s single, which I just played to death because I couldn't
Mhm.
afford the album. So I couldn't afford the £1.99 for the album, but I had the single of Overkill. I played it to death, and then Bomber, and then
Bomber's so good.
Bomber is. I think Bomber is still one of my favorite, possibly as a track. I don't know. It's hard to say, but and then of course Ace of Spades and so on, and then the live, No Sleep Till Hammersmith. They were just all over my consciousness in that era, and it was
Mhm.
so exciting. All you had to do, and I was doing a lot of music. I was a DJ and did live discos, and some were discos and some were heavy rock discos. All you had to
Mhm.
do was put Ace of Spades on or Bomber, and the place just went mental.
Oh, I
So
bet.
fun
I bet.
times, fun times.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned fun times. I guess I'll use that as a way of capitalizing. Unless you got anything more you want to
No,
add
no,
to
that
it.
was just my early kind of
Oh,
experiences.
perfect, perfect. So, as I got hooked on Snakebite Love, which my friends, before you know it, they actually started accidentally saying "Snipe My Love,"
Sniped
and
my
before
love.
you know it, yeah, everyone just started calling the song. Oh, yeah, yeah, you want to "Snipe My Love,"
It
and the
could be
reason he
shanked
got
my love.
yeah. So and the reason why my buddy got hold of albums because it was at a time where because he couldn't afford because he didn't have he was just about starting his first job and he borrowed it from a library he lived down the street
Mm.
from. And then all of a sudden there was a late night radio station and they're like the new Motorhead song. I was like, oh, a new Motorhead song. And this is at a point where I had no idea they had 20 albums. I knew they had been around a bit. I kind of
Mm.
figured, judging by how Ace of Spades sound, and then Snipe My Love. And then all of a sudden I heard the song In the Year of the Wolf.
Mm.
And there is going to be on the album Inferno coming out that summer. And my mind was absolutely blown. I was like, holy crap. This is like Motorhead, like on steroids. If I was like, oh, dude, this is like extra energy, extra heavy. Just it was just
Mm.
extra. I was just like, holy crap! It's like when you want like a cheeseburger and you want extra cheese, extra beef, extra barbecue sauce,
Yeah.
extra bacon, and for like we all got the album when it came out, and we were all just jamming it
Mm.
endlessly, relentlessly.
Uh,
It
great
led us down.
example of great example of how good they continued to be, of course.
Yeah, later on.
Yeah.
And we got so hooked on it for throughout the summer and into the fall. I'm like, oh, we should go back and see where it all began. And that's where we started seeking out, stuff like Orgasmatron, where we started seeking out Ace of Spades,
Yeah.
Motorhead. Like, it was like, oh, hey. It was funny hearing that very first album. You hear the song motor, you hear Motorhead. It's like,
Mm.
whoa. This is where they came from with all the unusual productions back at the time, you couldn't if you didn't have money, you didn't sound good. So you just
Mm.
worked with what you had.
I don't think the Motorhead necessarily cared. They just played louder.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
But
that's exactly what they did.
their production wasn't too bad, especially in Bomber and Ace of Spades. But it wasn't just the sound of the songs; it was the image. It was the rock and roll lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
These guys were lads. They were not. pretty boys, and they were not trying to appeal to like a pop demographic in any way. They were just straight ahead rock and roll guys. So they were
Mm-hmm.
their attitude in interviews and the humor, a lot of humor, but their I don't give a shit attitude was very attractive at the time.
Oh, dude. Yeah, it was. Go on.
Yeah, it's not just it was like because especially as punk was becoming big when Motorhead were hitting, and so they got love from all sides. They got love from the metal fans, they got love from the punks, but they had the sort of a crossover sound as well, taking the best of both.
Mm-hmm.
But as Lemmy said himself, we're a rock and roll band, and we're rock and roll guys. We
Mm-hmm.
drink, we smoke, we swear, we fuck, whatever, that was refreshing. They weren't trying to play the oh, we want to be the toppermost of the poppermost,
Mm-hmm.
It was fun. It was a fun band to follow.
You
Uh,
know, I'm glad you mentioned that because it reminds me as I was going down the well, this was right when YouTube was starting to form.
mm,
And I would look up stuff on Motorhead. What's up, Joe Dog? I'm like, oh, I should look up Motorhead. And that's when I started learning about how um the imagery and the
mm,
names. I learned about Mickey D, Phil Campbell, Lemmy. Obviously, those are the final three guys before the band was no more. Obviously, the Mickey D was not an
mm,
original. Now with Phil Campbell. Phil was there for a very long time. Mickey
he
as well,
was
just not as extensively. But you had Filthy Taylor. They
filthy
were a
Phil
four.
Taylor. Yeah.
Yeah, they were a four-piece. Then went down to three-piece for the last 8 or 9 albums.
Yeah.
And
It just worked better for them, I think. Three piece
I'm sure it
lineup.
was cheaper too. They had more money for booze and drugs. So I was
Less to
blown.
pay out. Yeah, that's one
I,
more wage we don't have to pay.
it let me know how important the idea of the rock star was. And I'm not talking about the rock star in terms of
Mm,
like, look at me, high, mighty, and famous and rich, but more of the rock star in terms of how iconic Lemmy looked, how much he sounded, the way
mm,
he dressed, like the attire that the band represented, and also his attitude. I remember just like being blown away watching videos of him and interviews and then little clips and reading interviews. And I was just like, every time he spoke, he had something to say, whether it was
oh
about a
yeah,
band or about just a random life thing or about music. He also because it's another one of those guys from your side of the pond. He loved to have his jokes too. He
he
loved
did.
to have his
Oh,
jokes.
hell of a sense of humor, and he did a lot of TV in those days. When I'm talking about the late '70s in Britain, the band did a lot of TV, and they were always hilarious. I mean, not that they were trying to be goofy, but they were just ordinary kind of rock and roll guys like you and I would be, and so they had that kind of humor.
Uh,
So they were just like falling about a studio all the time, or Lemmy would be chatting up some bird in the background, or some dancing girl on a pop show that they were playing on, and they would hang out with other bands as well. Like they were always collaborating, hanging out with other bands. It was just a fun experience whenever they were around. But when Lemmy spoke, as you say, he'd be interviewed. He didn't go out of his way to attack other bands, but if he was asked about something,
mm-hmm,
he'd tell the truth. He'd say, "Oh yeah, I can love that guy," or "You know what, that guy's a complete ass. They're frauds, whatever." He didn't hold back. He wouldn't go out of his way to diss them, but he also was honest. He never hid his opinion either. So it's authenticity. That's the
mm-hmm.
word I'm looking for.
It
It's
was
what,
it was authenticity. And yeah, it wasn't like when we talk about the joke of you want to find the vegan finds you. He wasn't that. It
mm,
wasn't like someone like, wow, it's really nice out today. The sun is shining, the grass is green. And by the way, Iron Maiden's terrible. It wasn't like one of those things. Like it was, you really nailed it. I'd say he had to actually be asked. But then when that happened, he would go all in. And as
mm,
genres and subgenres and trends came and went, obviously you could tell interviewers were just hungry for his thoughts on these things as the
Oh
time went,
yeah.
and they were mostly unfavorable,
A
but
lot of
he,
unfavorable ones.
but they
Excuse
but
me.
they were very
Oh, yeah.
entertaining on like take. They were just like, oh, it's like the typical, I guess you could say, old man yells at clouds take. They were just like, oh, okay, wow, he's ready to rip them apart, like and tear him a new asshole type of take. So I was like, okay, this guy's out for blood.
Oh yeah. Well, there was. Yeah, I mean, he wouldn't mince his words about people he didn't like, and I think that was about because a lot of it I think was he personally didn't. If he personally didn't like somebody, and he
Mm-hmm.
was, let's face it, these guys were touring all the time and they rubbed up against all sorts of bands and people. I think if he
Mm-hmm.
thought someone was an asshole, that was it. He was going to
Mm-hmm.
just give them shit, and no matter how famous they were
Mm-hmm.
or what
Mm-hmm.
they thought they were. Because these were guys that would prefer to hang out with the roadies than necessarily hobnob with, the upper echelons of superstars, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and in fact, my roadie pals, the rowdies, a lot of them did know Lemmy quite well, and he would be the guy buying them a beer in the bar, at the bar, rather than oh, there's so and so, I'm going to go suck up to them. He didn't play that game. He
No,
wasn't playing a game.
no, he had an attitude that was unlike other guys because even though his band was very well respected and to
Mm.
some, and I guess you could say in this case many, he's legendary, but yet he wasn't the most well known guy. But it was one of those things where if you knew, you knew, and not only did you know, he stuck with you, and it was kind of like a you jump and react type of guy.
Yeah, I
He
think
was
it's
such a very deep man of his convictions. And I think that was
yeah,
something a lot of people like because, especially with guys when they get older, most of them do tend to mellow down. I don't think he really ever did mellow down
never
his
mellowed
looks,
down. No,
ever,
no.
like
Uh,
ever.
And I think it's a slightly different scenario from me being born and brought up in Britain.
Mm-hmm.
And in America, he was a lot better known in Britain. He was a bit of a star in Britain. Motorhead were pretty famous, and Lemmy himself as an individual was pretty famous. I mean, he would appear in all sorts of variety shows and TV shows and pop up in all sorts of weird places. So I guess he wasn't. You're saying he might have been more kind of obscure over here. Over there, he was a star. Uh,
Wow.
like in Britain, everyone, the front page newspaper type star, like Lemmy, he was
Everyone knew my dad.
famous and beloved. I mean, I know you've got some stuff, but I got
Yeah,
a
no, no,
few
no.
photos. This, I love
Let's
it. And he
get it
started
up.
in the 60s because he started way back in the 60s. There he is with his first
Wow.
band, the Rockin' Vickers.
Wow,
The Rockin'
dude.
Vickers. Look at him, how
I,
fresh faced he is. How
it
cute.
it almost like doesn't seem right, Bill,
Yeah,
especially without the warts too.
yeah, and there he
It's
is with Jimi Hendrix as Jimi Hendrix's roadie, wrestling
wow,
the amps there
holy
because
crud,
he was
dude.
Hendrix's roadie. So it's hard to remember, but he was that far back and that well embedded in rock history, And then
Mm-hmm,
Hawkwind, of
mm-hmm.
course. Famously, the band he got thrown out of for taking the wrong type of drugs. Like they were
Yo.
all LSD freaks, and he was into speed. And he got caught at the border between Canada and America or something,
Of
and
course
got
you
done
did.
for carrying some stuff on him, and they threw him out of the band. But Hendrix, yeah, he was a pal of Hendrix's, and of course, if you think to that era, you're talking 66 to 70. Who else did he know? I mean, he knew all those guys for being in that business. He knew them all. So
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
it would have been funny to have him hear him playing with Hendrix if Hendrix hadn't died. Like Hendrix on guitar, Lemmy on bass. That would be
Oh,
an
I know,
interesting.
right? And Lemmy had a really interesting way of playing the bass. It was
Yeah,
something I didn't actually notice until I actually saw him mess with it because his bass when he would pick it because he was a pick player. He wasn't a
Yeah.
finger player. He was a pick, but it was one of those sounds where the way he made it sound, it made it sound like it was like a rumbly, fuzzy sound. I was
Mm,
like, oh, that's him on the bass doing that.
yeah.
I've always wondered what that was when I've listened on albums before. My mind was blown until when I saw him, getting ready for a show, and I was just
He
like, my
he
life, all this time type of moment. I
he
figured that
went
out when I was like 20, I think.
Yeah, he went a little bit down the John Entwistle route. Not that John Entwistle was all the blue, 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 whereas Lemmy was more of a picking and strumming. He strummed the bass a lot. He played chords on the bass, but he had the similar thing where they turned the amps up to 11 and he had high treble on it. So the bass would sound like a guitar often. It was that high overdriven sound, not a boom, 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 kind of bass. That was same as John Entwistle. He was all played right at the top of everything was turned up, including the treble. So it sounded, you don't think, is that a guitar playing there? No, it was Lemmy, like the start of Ace of Spades itself. That's bass.
Yeah, that blew my mind because I was like, I thought it was just some like thing going off. No, that was Lemmy on the bass. It freaking blew my mind, man.
Oh,
I couldn't believe it.
unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, I think he was a little bit, no, what was the word? Self-deprecating about his abilities. He'd say, "Oh, I just strum it. I'm not a great bass player." I think he was a little bit underplaying that.
I To me, Lemmy's one of those guys when it comes to him in the bass. He was a great Motorhead bass player.
Yes.
If that makes any sense. I kind of liken it to, people say, like, as I guess we'll use an actor, that Chris Evans is an okay actor. I mean, okay, maybe you can have your word that's him, but he is. He's a great Captain America actor.
Yeah.
And that was what Lemmy is a great Motorhead bass player. What he did worked in service of Motorhead. Probably wouldn't work in most groups. You could probably try it in some of the bands that obviously are very shameless about ripping off that sound, whether it's a Speed Wolf or whether it's the Motorhead Venom hybrid of Midnight. Maybe you can pull out that sound, but that was mainly a Motorhead exclusive. You just had to in order to really pull it out. That was the way to go, was Motorhead for that type of sound. And it was great because especially when you look at live clips, it really comes across live. Holy crud.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was lucky to see them on the Ace of Spades tour. The only time I ever did see them, and it was
the only time. Okay,
mental.
Do tell about that. So, that was in that was in the home country.
That was well, I was in near. It was in Birmingham at the Birmingham Odeon. Probably get retrospectively I could get done for this, but I was in the RAF at the time, and I got sneaked out of the base when an exercise had been called in the trunk of someone's car to go to the gig because I didn't want to miss it. So, that was a little bit of a, shouldn't have done that, but, sneaked out of the base rather than doing a pretend exercise thing. They call sirens go off and you're supposed to pretend there's a whatever happening. So, I went to Birmingham, to the Birmingham Odeon, and so Birmingham Odeon's maybe
they were headliners people at this
show.
Oh
yeah, it's Ace of Spades headliners, and it was just mental. Like,
I'm sure,
loud, raucous. The crowd were just going nuts. The smell of leather and patchouli oil and other substances was
you're drenched.
Beer everywhere. It was just I don't know what I was 17 or something. I don't know. It was just mental. And it was such a wonderful gig. And when you think about it, that's 3 albums in, 4 if you counted the early pre-Bomber material, pre-Overkill material. But it was, so every track was a gem, and just like, I'll never forget it.
Wow, that's incredible.
Never forget it. It was one of, when you go to a great gig and everyone's just going mental.
Oh,
that's what it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like everyone's going nuts.
I had seen them twice in my life. Good night, Penny. Thanks for being here. What's up, Jonathan Conroy?
Hey,
I only caught
Gary's here.
Geary. I only caught them on support tours. And that was twice, and they're both in the same year. So they are doing the Gigant tour, being direct support for Megadeth.
Hmm.
And luckily, they did still get to play a good, solid 12 or 13 songs. So it was a
That's
nice,
good.
still 45 or 50 minutes. And they are promoting, I think, the album "The World Is Yours" at the time. They did
Okay,
one
yeah,
or two
yeah.
songs from that album, and they did extra touring for that more than they normally did. Because for a while they're kind of like doing an album every 2 years. They do a tour and then album, tour, album. This time they did album, tour plus more touring for that one. So I caught them on that Megadeth tour, and then they did the Rockstar Mayhem Festival tour,
Okay, yeah.
and they were on there. Slipknot and Slayer were headlining it, and they were the very third to last band. And I just remember hearing Lemmy's bass was really loud and deafening, per se.
Deafening, yes.
Good night, Max.
I,
What's up, Jaffo? It was.
uh,
I was just like, holy crap! It was so weird to like see him on stage because it felt like a tall tale, like like Paul Bunyan or something. Like
yeah.
holy crap, you're really real. I
The
want to
the
poke one of his warts.
yeah, the loud, of course, they were phenomenally loud, and it's weird because it's another one of these things where it's three guys, and it's not even like a four-piece band with a singer and three musicians. It's three guys, unbelievable volume, and
Mhm.
yet it never sounded unlistenable, if you know what I mean. You knew you could hear every song and every lyric, every vocal, every line. It
Mhm.
wasn't like overdriven to the point that it was just a mess. It was just
Mhm.
perfect. I don't know how they did that, but I'm just actually calling up here. I just looked it up. The actual set list from the gig I was at,
Ooh.
and it's nice to look back on this. It says this isn't the exact one; it's the one from a few days after or before. So
Okay.
Birmingham Odeon. This is Birmingham Odeon, Sunday, November 23rd, 1980.
Mhm. Mhm.
So the good, the
Get
bad,
a
and the
load of
ugly.
this, man.
Ace of Spades, Stay Clean, Metropolis, Iron Horse, Born to Lose, Capricorn, We Are the Road Crew, Love Me Like a Reptile, Shoot You in the Back, Live to
Shoot.
Win, yeah, Live to Win, Fast and Loose, Fire, Bite the Bullet, The Chase is Better Than the Catch, The
I
Hammer,
love
Dead.
that song, "The
Oh
Chase of
yeah,
Family Cash." Oh, that's a jam.
brilliant. I think that could be Lemmy's epitaph. So, maybe he carved that in his headstone. The Hammer, Dead Men Tell No Tales, Stone Dead Forever, and then Overkill, Bomber, and Motorhead. Uh, and the last three are just like, by that time you're exhausted, but it's incredible. I still think Overkill live is just one of the greatest things you'll ever hear in your life.
Overkill!
Yeah, it's just
Overkill!
sheer speed and power. And great, what a great singer, really. If you think about it, he's
Well,
singing.
he when he gets into his actual singing, which we'll get into a real. I just want to acknowledge this. Our buddy Max here. He's been a member for 8 months. A balls to the wall member. Max, I'll see you Wednesday night, sir. Thank you for being a member of the channel.
Yeah, good
Lemmy
night,
would
Max.
have these tracks where he would actually do some of his more, I guess you could say, cleaner type of singing. Sometimes it was just straight singing. And not only was he good at it, sometimes when you have singers who have more of like a gruffier type of vocal style on record, and then you see them, they translate to live, but when they also have to change their tone to do the singing on a live song, sometimes the
Hmm.
singing's a bit rough since they have to basically change their voice on the flip of a whim. Lemmy would actually sound great. One of the best proofs in the pudding was the song "Love Me Forever"
Hmm.
from the album 1916, which came
Oh,
out in
great album.
'91. That was the last album where Filthy was on the drums. This is
He
the very
was.
last album from Filthy,
Yeah.
very last one, and that was
There's some
uh,
good tracks on that album. I mean, I'm So
dude.
Bad, Baby, I Don't Care.
Oh, dude. The song
Going to
Ramones,
Brazil. Going
the
to
Ramones
Brazil.
song, the Going to Brazil.
Brilliant songs. Ramones.
Oh, the one that sing the blues was when I saw Motorhead.
Mm.
They actually played that song live. Oh, look at that. Our
Gary.
friend
Yeah.
Geary.
me.
Geary became a balls to the wall member. Thank you,
Gary's
Geary. I got
saying,
play him the clip. I gotta do it.
you got to do it.
I gotta do. Ah, thank you, Geary.
Gary's trying to make overtures to me to sing him to sleep, but I don't think it's going to happen.
All
You
right,
should be so lucky.
all right. So this is the set list I have right here.
All right, go for
February
it. Yeah.
12th,
It's
2012.
great all this shit's online now because I would never remember otherwise.
And as someone who was there, I can say I think this might be 100% accurate. I think. So because obviously, memory can be, this was 12 years ago. This seems right. And I know one funny thing about Ace of Spades is Lemmy got so burnt out from singing that song live that when he would sing it, he would actually change the name of it. He would say 8 of spades. You wouldn't know it because everything's happening fast and loudly. Yeah. But that was Lemmy's thing of, okay, I'm just gonna say it because this is my coping mechanism because I'm burnt out with my own song. So
yeah, just like here we go again,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, look, we have Viking Nav on the Rumble side. He says, "Yo, nice. Stone Dad is a great song." Last time I saw Motorhead when they came with Iron Maiden. Nice, dude. That's a hell of an experience. Thanks for being on Rumble. And so, okay, so let's look at this. We got Bomber, Damage Case, I Know How to Die, Stay Clean, Over the Top,
great
It's Better Than the Catch, The One to Sing the Blues, that's from 1916, Going to Brazil, that's from 1916 as well.
Yeah.
So 2 1916 songs.
We see that. Cool.
Killed by Death, Ace of Spades, Overkill, and right here, they got the out. So yeah, you got 3 Overkill, 2 1916, 2 Ace, 2 Bomber, 1 No Remorse, and 1 The World Is Yours, which is I Know I'll Die. Yeah, I remember at the time being a little bummed that they didn't get at least one more song snuck in from The World Is Yours. It was actually good. That was the thing. Motorhead had a great renaissance where they were, when they were putting out later material of their 22 studio albums of original material, they were somehow on an upswing again. And I was like, oh, it was like one of those things where, yeah, it was a bummer when you lost, an old song from Overkill or Ace or 1916, but it made up for it when the new stuff was actually good.
Well, Motorizer and Aftershock were good albums. I mean, they were later on, and they were great albums. World Is Yours, good album. Yeah, the quality went. There were some dips maybe in between the classic stuff and that stuff. And then they went right back up again when they settled on that sort of second classic 3-piece lineup, I just think of the Queen of the Damned. That's a great track from late on. Heartbreaker, 1,000 Names of God. There's some great stuff on those last few albums, But I think it's chemistry. The chemistry of those 3 at the end were great,
Oh, it's fantastic. I could tell they were it was one of those perfect things. They were the trio. And me growing up, with Motorhead, I guess, that was, I guess you could say that was my lineup growing up, even though I learned about Filthy and all the other great players involved, where she had guys who are no slouches either, but also learned, if Lemmy also had an issue too with someone, whether it was a producer, he would straight up drop everything on a whim and change if they were in the middle of making an album. One of them, once again, being 1916. There, so if you look at the credits list for which I'm going to drop the screen and show off, there's two producers credited on 1916 because there exactly was 2 producers. So yeah, he did not like the guy that they had, so they just changed it. And I was like, holy crap, imagine that. Most bands are like, I guess we'll stick it out. We'll stick it out. We'll change after that. And he's just like, no, I don't like this. No, we're changing this now. I don't like this. So
it's funny because given their sort of hell-raising reputation and Lemmy's, his image as this kind of rock and roll hellraiser, drinking, drugs, womanizing. I think that it's kind of like the Keith Richards thing. I think a lot of that is that's yes, that's my persona, but in the studio, shit gets done. Like, the job is done, the record is made, and it's going to be made well. Like, so he was pretty much a pro when it came to that stuff. There was, not saying they didn't party, but I think he was that old school. We're going to do this work and we're going to make the best record we can, and then we'll party. So it seemed to me the quality of the albums generally, maybe one or two, didn't suffer from any extracurricular activities. And if band members started to get into that too much, I think that's when they got let go.
And there were some falling outs. One of them being Filthy Taylor, which rest in peace as well to him.
Yeah.
And
and they made up later, of course. They did make up later.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So okay, and yes, guys, I know it's Wikipedia, but when it's right, it's right. Right here, you can look right here, Mr. Blah blah. Ed Stasium did a few songs and then got fired, and Pete Sully got hired on to do the rest of like the 6-7 songs. I was like, holy crap, that actually happened. Like that's a big deal. So I guess that may also be maybe playing to your point, a testament to how maybe overly professional Lemmy was, because he was such a like, we got to get this done and get back on the road, because he lived for being on the road. That was was his home. It wasn't like I go home and then I get back on. It was like, no, we're gonna the studio's a moment and we gotta get back out there, because it is clear he never wanted to lose the touch of being in a live band. Because from what I know, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't feel like there's any like real extended hiatus from Motorhead.
I don't think so. I think they were pretty much touring constantly from 76, 75, 76 onwards. I'd have to look it up, but I don't seem to recall them taking like 3 years off at any point, or there was always something going on live, as you say, lived for that, and they were relatively well known in more so in Europe than possibly North America. So there was always a lot of gigging going on, and I think the thing about producing a guy like Lemmy, or a band like Motorhead, and it's really a guy like Lemmy, is I don't think you need a producer that's going to be too hands-on and too, you know what, I don't like the way you played that note there. We're going to do that again. I think it's more of a guy that's going to be an engineer that can do the technical stuff and mix it well. The band are going to play what the band are going to play, and they're going to have their setup they're going to use. And it's a fairly consistent sound. I mean, there's not much more you can do with a 3-piece power metal band like that. So I think you need a guy that's to produce them that would just say, we're going to make this sound the best it can. We're going to engineer it and mix it to make it sound good. You're not going to tell Lemmy, well, you know what, I think you should try doing this bass instead of that bass. So maybe a producer that tried that would be like, fuck off.
Yeah. No. So, okay, I looked into it. There's only 2 gaps where there was more than 2 years between albums. Yeah. There was one gap between The World Is Yours and Aftershock 2010 to 2013. And then there was a 4-year gap from Rock and Roll to 1916, which I love Rock and Roll, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Rock and Roll is freaking, ooh, man.
I mean, he did have some health issues here and there with his heart.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff, so that's probably caused a bit of a gap occasionally.
But it's funny how, and even those gaps, there wasn't like hey, we're going to go on an extended break. Maybe we'll be back 5-7 years. No, all 22 albums. The only gap with 2010 to 13 was playing to my point familiar is that they did more touring for them than they normally do, because they're on more support tours. Because usually later on their career, they didn't really get many support tours. It was more like, hey, we're going to go back down, do our headlining thing, go back, make an album, get back on the road, do it all over again. This time they actually had 2 supporters with Megadeth, the Mayhem Festival. So they're actually doing more than a few support tours, and it seems like that worked to their advantage between those 2, Triple H, WWF promotion. It seems like it definitely was making them a lot bigger. Because it seems like they must have been big in your country. Because
They were big stars in Britain
in
and Europe.
America, in America, I'd say the venue that they would headline, let's just say for conversation's sake, in Chicago, they would headline a venue that had probably around like 2,000 people, which is not particularly, that's bad. That's astounding. I mean, not many of us can even bring in, if we want to do something, we'd probably be in 10 people's show. But compared to, let's just like Iron Maiden, where they're playing somewhere between 20 and 30,000 in America on a basis, they're not as big as like Maiden, anywhere as big as Maiden per se in the country. But they had a diehard reputation. I'll tell you that, man.
Respected by other bands, influential to other
in
bands.
America, yes. Yeah. I mean, you could ask Metallica, yes, Guns N' Roses. They all worshipped at the ground of Lemmy. I mean, when there was the Big Four show at Yankee Stadium in 2011, Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, and Anthrax, when they got up on stage for Metallica's last song of the night, it was them all getting together, all the members from all four bands got together to do a cover of Motorhead's Overkill.
Yeah.
They did a cover of Motorhead's Overkill at Yankee Stadium.
I would be, shocked if they hadn't been heavily influenced by Motorhead. Motorhead are like the grandfathers of everything that came after from 77, 78 onwards.
Yeah. They definitely kind of like spawned everything off because, as you mentioned, like they kind of united the punks and the metalheads, and it got me to get some of the punks that I knew into some of the metal stuff because that was a big turning point. Because I'd be, oh hey, Jim, check out these guys. You might like us. You might like this, and they like because it's fast. The average song is 2 to 3 minutes. Average song is 2 to 3 minutes. Like, oh damn, these are bangers. These are absolute bangers, but. Yeah. Another thing that Lemmy also had, he actually knew how to write some really, once again, insightful lyrics. Yeah. He wrote great lyrics. Like, yeah, he'd write his silly, ridiculous lyrics, but when he wanted to get down and serious with some stuff, man, he could cut deep. He could cut a few damn wounds with his stuff, man.
He could. I mean, he was not. I mean, again, Lemmy, he's just a hard drinking, bruising, loud playing, whatever. The guy could write. He'd been in music since the 60s. He knew what he was doing. He knew how to write. He had a lot of lyrics, and he could also deliver them with a lot of passion and emotion. As well. I actually love the covers album they did with the way he sings things like Heroes. About his heroes is absolutely brilliant. It's a fantastic vocal on that. He didn't write that, obviously, but his vocal delivery was brilliant on it. But the stuff he wrote himself, there's some incredibly witty and but also some deep and meaningful lyrics in some of those too. Well, you only have to look at 1916 itself to know what the guy could do when he take away all the rock aspects of it. He could write.
Oh, yes, he could. My only Lemmy story is from my dad. He wanted to play lead guitar, but the area had he played bass like a lead guitar. I love that, man.
He tried to play guitar, but it wasn't working. I think Hendrix did give him some lessons on things, but partly it was lessons on how to get better drugs. But but yeah, he taught him a lot about theatrics as well on stage. Not that Lemmy would bounce about, but Hendrix knew how to put on a show, But
hey, Gilmeister, I got you, man. I got the stuff.
I got the stuff.
What's up, Primark? We me and 70s kind of kept this mostly secret and just kind of surprise people.
Just a wee tribute to Lemmy.
That's what we're
doing.
The
legend.
And that's why you may have missed it because we just kind of dress dropped it on everyone.
We're a day late. We're a day late, I think. Day late and $1 short.
Next year will be 10 years. We'll do it. We'll do it on the day of.
We're a day late and $1 short as usual. But I also wanted to call out before I forget.
Yeah.
Today was the anniversary of Cozy Powell's birth. The great drummer Cozy Powell, who
Cozy,
I absolutely adored.
What a player!
passed away in 1998, but he was born 29th December 1947. So rest in peace, Cozy.
Yes. What a player.
What
Seriously.
a
His stuff
drummer.
on Black Sabbath.
Oh, yeah. Sabbath, Rainbow. The Rainbow era was huge for me that
Oh,
he was in Rainbow.
dude.
White Snake, as you mentioned, Sabbath, Brian May Band later. Just, yeah, I love that guy. So R.I.P. Cozy.
Very
Or
overlooked
happy birthday,
player.
Cozy. I should
Oh, yeah. That's right. Very
his birthday.
overlooked.
Oh god,
Very
yeah.
overlooked. Like,
Again, another guy that was actually a pretty bigger star over where I'm from than here.
uh-huh.
Because yeah, he was like a superstar drummer over there. I guess because bands like Rainbow didn't quite have the commercial impact here, he maybe was a little less known. But another guy, obviously, a lot of musicians would rave. Other musicians would rave about. For me, one of the top 10 drummers of all time. Just probably Lemmy liked him. I would think.
Oh,
I don't know.
Well, we'll talk about some people who Lemmy didn't like.
Oh yeah, this is always a fun
so
conversation.
yeah, I know, right? So there was a quote. I think it was from Rolling Stone. I saved it in my notes, and I think it was Rolling Stone. Like, bands like Radiohead, they're always changing their sound with every album. And Lemmy then replied, "And they're not very good." And he's like, "Oh, you're not a Radiohead fan?" No. I was just like, that's just it. No.
Yeah.
And that was like, yeah, and those, and that's definitely an argument that a lot of people tend to use. And whether you like Radiohead in the chat, you're right. But I think the point Lemmy was trying to make outside of not being fan music is just because someone changes doesn't automatically equate to being great. It seemed like the interviewer was trying to use that as like a leverage point for argument, because you can make the same album and be good, or even in some cases be bad. You can make change, and it doesn't always make it equate to being good or even bad.
I agree with it, but people always going about, oh, such and such an artist, he changed every time, he was different every time. Why is that good always? Is that really a good thing all the time? Like, I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but is it a guarantee that it's a good thing? No.
Yeah,
It still has to be good.
I never understood how that makes it absolutely like by default good.
Well,
that to me never made sense.
They go, oh, I'll give you an example, and I've never liked this person, but Madonna. They go, people would say, oh, every album she does is different. Well, she's still shit. It doesn't make any difference. She's still
I'm
crap.
definitely with you there. Yeah.
It's so what that they change every time. I mean, it's. I get it. A lot of bands do like to change and experiment and stuff, but they still have to have something that at their core which makes them good. I know he didn't like, and I have to agree with him. He hated all the new metal
Oh,
with a
we're going
vengeance.
there.
We're going there.
We're probably going there.
He did not like Limp Bizkit.
Limp Bizkit was a big one. He was very vocal
I
about.
don't understand it.
Oh, what was the stuff? He said, "Fucking people like Limp Bizkit." I don't understand. This. Hey, Lemmy, if it makes you feel better, I didn't understand it too, because at the time in the late '90s, they blew up like there was no tomorrow, and then less than half a century. Sorry, not century. Half a decade later, it was like they were never to be seen or heard for again. From what I know, they still exist today, but they're nowhere near like as we knew them from 1999 through like 2003 per se. It was like they just were like a blink and you'll miss it moment at the time where they blew up, and then they didn't fade away. They burnt out, and they burnt out quickly. And I remember the beginning of the end of the burnout of Limp Dip shit, as I like to call them. Yeah. That was my name for them, because I respected I didn't like Fred Durst, still don't. I respected some of the guys in his band because I know them from other bands where they were actually good. But Fred Durst was always like that was where my beef was. Always, it was Fred Durst, his singing and his lyrics and who he was as a guy. Fred Durst to me was just like the absolute epitome of like trash, absolute trash. So I was like, to me when Lemmy was taking shots at him, I was like, oh yeah, keep at it, Lemmy. Don't stop,
That's right.
don't
Yeah,
stop.
and because I've never liked Limp Dipshit, as you call him, and I've never liked Slipknot, and he hated Slipknot.
Oh yeah, he hated Slipknot too. Yeah,
I've
he
never liked them.
he he was never shot.
They're just gimmick bands, I think, and he didn't like that at all. And there was a couple of bands he criticised that. I mean, he didn't seem to be too keen on the Clash, and I was pretty keen on them. But Radiohead, I can understand why he wouldn't
that one I
necessarily like.
get. I
Yeah,
don't get the Clash one. I'm with you there. I don't get the whole Clash one.
I
But as
think that might
far
have been
as
a personal thing. I mean, he knew those guys, like they were in the pub rock circuit, the touring circuit, long before punk existed. So he might have known them from way back, and maybe it was a personal thing. Radiohead's a funny one because I, I don't actually disrespect them for the stuff they've done. And I actually really liked two or three of their earlier albums and saw them live. They're fantastic. So I just don't particularly like the later stuff, but I don't fault them for doing it. You know, they
Mhm.
were an experimental band, and that's what they were. So, but I can understand why Lemmy wouldn't necessarily like them. They're not very rock and roll.
No, they're
He's
not
a rock
rock
and
and
roll guy.
roll.
So yeah, I see Gary. I'm listening to your stuff, Gary. We're definitely going to do a stream soon talking about your music. It's just I
Let's
need more
do
time to
it.
listen to it. Do it.
He's got to soak your music in. All right,
I'm gonna
and
suck it in. I'm gonna suck it into
then
my brain.
dude, we got 15 on YouTube, 14 on Rumble. That's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. What's up, Pope? Nice to see you, buddy. I want to touch on another thing. Like, I guess you could say it's really not another thing. It's more of an extension of what we were talking about 5 minutes ago. We were talking about how people associate changing as automatically equates to good. Motorhead have had this to me, and this misunderstanding of putting out the same album, which I've actually always disagreed with.
I disagree.
I'd say they put out similar albums, but to say that they're same to me is you're not being honest. If you're or not even, maybe I'll be more generous. It's not that you're being not honest. I think you're not listening.
Yeah.
That's what I'll go with. Because if you put on Bomber compared to Ace or Ace compared to Down Another Day, you're hear very different albums. Or then if you put on Down Another Day to 1916, or then you take 1916 compared to Sacrifice, or take Sacrifice compared to Kiss of Death to Motorizer. You hear variations of things. Yeah, there's obviously a lot of these signature tropes, but some albums you're gonna be all in. Some will have one or two slower tunes, and even sometimes the slower tunes there'll be different things. One could be a cello thing, one could be having a flute playing. Sometimes the slower tunes can be a bit more upbeat as well. Some could be completely slow, like the title track from 1916. So there is variations in
I
the
think
slower
there's
stuff, and
variation.
there is, and then there's variations in the heavier side too. Because if you take albums like the heaviest ones to me are probably Inferno and Sacrifice. Those are like
Mm.
heavy
Yeah,
Motorhead.
and yet others were a bit more kind of rock and roll, fast rock and roll oriented. Some were even had bluesier edges to them.
Yes.
Yeah, so there was variation on them, I think, and yeah, obviously the sound changed a bit with the different production techniques and ability. I mean, different making an album in '77 from 2007. There's a big difference. So I don't think they ever sounded stuck in the past to me. You know, their albums were not carbon copies of each other, and the tracks, individual tracks within those albums, could be radically different sometimes. So yeah, that's. I mean, there's not much you can do with that format. It's a three-piece power metal rock and roll band. So they go that long, you're not going to make radical. There's not going to be a radical change. They're not suddenly going to become Depeche Mode or Genesis. You know, it's Motorhead. So what can you do? Is if the quality of the songs is high enough, it doesn't matter if there are similarities over the years between the albums. Yeah.
To me, when you would hear, a Motorhead album, like, yeah, you knew what you were going to get. But to me, there was enough there that stood on its own 2 feet. And it still seemed fresh. To me, it was like going to like get like a really nice pizza from, let's just say, Vito and Nix. Vito and Nix is a Southside joint, been there for about 100 years now. You knew what you're gonna get. Sometimes you could taste something subtly different. It wasn't anything drastic, but it was still the same great pizza you knew to love, and it still felt new every time. To me, Motorhead was, it's Vito and Nix. It was
I mean, you don't suddenly go, you know what, this album sounds so much like the one 10 years ago that I hate it. It doesn't work like that.
Mm-hmm.
Do the songs stand up on their own, even if it's recognizably Motorhead? Listen to Aftershock, for instance. There's some in 2013 album towards the end of their time.
Great album.
Brilliant album with some fantastic tracks on it. So what if it's the same band that made Overkill?
Yeah. So what?
You know?
I agree.
What are they supposed to do? I mean, it's very hard for certainly a three-piece band like that to reinvent themselves. I know ZZ Top did a little bit of that with when they got into the sort of using the synthesizers and whatever. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's still ZZ Top. You can still hear it. It's still so. There's only so much you can do with that. It's not like you're talking about a six-piece band with keyboards and all sorts.
Yes, sir. All right.
And it's rock and roll. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with rock and roll still sounding like rock and roll?
And that's the beauty of it, because they were one of the few bands, especially if you think about the 90s in America. The 90s in America, you had grunge, you had new metal, and then if you want to go like all the way with it into the early 2000s, you had the emo thing coming around as well. And through all those trends, they held the line. Yeah, sure, they may have been a little less popular because they were definitely in the 90s. They were playing smaller venues in America, but they still, held it down in terms of not only just maintain quality, but that they refused to change just because everyone else was watering down the sound. Some bands even changed their sounds, even ones that I like. They were either trying to appeal to the hard rock audience, look at you, Megadeth and Metallica, or you would try to go towards the groove type of sound of the Panteros of the world, or you'd be trying to even neuter yourself like Sepultura and try to appeal to the new metal crowd. So Motorhead was the band that just said, no, we're going to be Motorhead as remember it.
Yeah.
And it looks like it came back around for them full circle because
don't chase trends.
No, never chase a trend, and it worked out anyways. What's up, Cotton? Come 2004 when Inferno came out, that was the beginning, I guess you could say, of a second win for them. Now, Inferno, they as far as America goes, it seems like they kind of maintained it over on the other side.
Well, they faded a bit over time when the hits dried up, the hit singles, because they had quite a few hit singles in the early days, and so it faded a bit, but not for metal fans. So they were always still huge and a big festival draw.
Oh, I'm sure
on the European festival circuit over the years, they were always a big draw in that, and they could still pack theaters, 2,000 seaters consistently. They wouldn't be. They were never, these guys are only going to play in a club with 200 people. It was always like theater sized or above. So, but yeah, I kind of like bands that stand their ground and say, this is who we are. We're not going to try and pretend we're something else because everybody's chasing the new metal sound or everyone's chasing whatever. Authenticity
is people the best currency, as someone we know in our sphere, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett likes to say. And I agree with him. I strongly agree.
Authenticity. Yeah.
Let's look at this clip because I feel like this is I want to, I get to a clip of a very another clip. Side of Lemmy that people don't get to see. I feel like
this really clip,
really good side. So,
headbanger and guitar player for 6.5 years. I do groups like, wait a minute, 16.5. Just told me you're 10.5? Yeah, all right. I do groups like Metallica, Slayer, Iron Maiden, Testament, Megadeth. No Motorhead I see. Love, hate, just about any good kick-ass metal band. My problem is, since I'm black, other blacks put me down and say that I'm a disgrace to the colour. Tell them just...
Yeah.
Right. I'm only holding on to this because, I have to still pause because it's still someone else's video. And YouTube, like, hey, this guy's pulling your video and getting credit for it. So, YouTube AI, please, we're just paying tribute. That's all we're doing.
That's right.
Here.
This is a commentary.
This is a commentary. Thank you.
My problem is, since I'm black, other blacks put me down and say that I'm a disgrace to the colour. Tell them to shove it, boy. Jimi Hendrix did all right, remember? Pisses me off.
All right. I didn't mean to pause it so soon, but the reason why I did, because he touches on a good point that gets outright ignored, if not forgotten, if not both. Jimi Hendrix, Chuck Berry. What are they both?
Yeah, interesting point.
And they're both like kind of essential players.
Well, Hendrix still regarded by many as the greatest rock guitarist ever, greatest electric guitarist ever. Black guy, you know. I mean,
yeah.
But when you notice the kid said it's other black kids are putting me down because they think he shouldn't be doing what they were considered white rock stuff. Mm-hmm. So this nonsense, you know, people should love what they love.
Mm-hmm. Straight up.
Because my dad feels the same way. Most of the time we just tell these people to die off, but I don't know how to handle my dad. My mum is real cool about it. Well, women usually have more sense than men, I tell you. But what should I do about my dad? All right, you weatherman, because you might not be watching the TV because there's white people on it, you know. Being like that about another colour is the same as Hitler was about being Jewish and about other colours. You cannot be just one colour.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got to be true to yourself, and I like the way he puts these things. You know.
Yeah, he's really to a point with his points. He doesn't need to go on for 5-10 minutes. He's just really straight arrow by, and this is not even 2 minutes.
If the bloody thing is ever going to work out properly, then we all have to intermarry and screw each other blind and get to be coffee-ish. But then we'd still find people that were lighter than those guys, right? Mm-hmm. You can't win with that one, but you can win by just doing it. Tell them to go to hell, right? They want to keep you safe and warm in the black community. And if the black community can't handle you, shove them. Go someplace else. Little Richard, when he had his first hits,
Little Richard
was ostracized completely, an outcast by the blacks. They all said, oh, he's sold out. He didn't sell out. He was playing the music he liked, and white people liked it. You know, should you be penalized for giving people joy? Screw them.
Yeah, exactly. Music is music, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah, I wonder what happened to the kid that wrote to him there. Hopefully he went on to play and keep playing and keep liking the bands that he loved, regardless of what anybody says. It'd be like saying to, you know, you or me, oh, we shouldn't like Motown or shouldn't like, you know, old rock and roll like Little Richard or Chuck Berry or all those guys. That's nonsense, you know. Anyway.
Nah.
Words of wisdom from Lemmy.
And you know what? Speaking of wisdom, I have a few other statements I highlighted because I want to talk about them. One, he said, I think it was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he says, if you're going to be a fucking rock star, go be one. People don't want to see the guy next door on stage. They want to see a being from another planet.
That's right.
I mean, and I think that absolutely worked when I saw him, because to me, once again, it didn't feel real. It felt like I was seeing like something from a movie or a tall tale. Like it felt like I was seeing something cinematic in a way. That was just like, holy crap! Like you are real. Like you're actually here in front of me. And to me, you're the story I hear about. You're what I read about. Now here you are in front of me. It was a kind of a surreal moment when I first saw Lemmy in person in Milwaukee on stage. I was like,
he's a legend. Yeah, I mean, is that really him? You know, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely he definitely had that presence. Obviously, he's definitely got an appearance you couldn't mistake for millions of miles away.
And that was part of his thing. I mean, that way he dressed and the hats and the bandoliers and all the other stuff they wore there. It was that larger than life. He didn't leap about on the stage, but he had a look and a stance. So that was his concession to being, this is the larger than life rebel rock and roller figure. So children
This
of
is true.
Bodega.
Warachi's right. Yeah, he did Stan Lee as well in 19? No, 2018. Because it was a few months after Steve Ditko had passed. Oh, wow. It's just, man, everyone's just
a lot of people
28th and 29th.
Yeah, this is a bad time for people. It's weird if you look
really
at it that
is. Like you think about it, like holy crap! Yeah, Carter did pass that day as 100. So, and then if you want to think about it, take December 8, John Lennon and Daryl as well from Pantera. So it's just like, man, everyone just decides it's the end of the year. Well, I guess it's the end of me too.
Speaking of John Lennon, I always loved what Lemmy had to say about the Beatles and the Stones. Lemmy was an enormous Beatles
very
fan.
Fondly of them. He was
enormous Beatles fan. I remember the Lemmy documentary. He goes into Tower Records to get the Beatles in mono box set, and he's like, he adored the Beatles, and he said that he thought the Stones though were, he says, according to the Stones were nothing more than middle class mummies boys who were terrible on stage. He says, the Beatles, he said, the Beatles were cleaned up for mass consumption, but they were anything but sissies. They were from Liverpool, a hard seafaring town. All those dockers and sailors around all the time who would beat the piss out of you if you so much as winked to them. The Rolling Stones were the mummies boys. They were all college students from the outskirts of London. The Stones were always shit on stage. He picked a side. You would think it would be the other way around.
No,
he picked a side. He picked the Beatles.
Been sitting there at all.
And he's got a point, because the Beatles will be, oh yeah, those all shiny Beatles with the suits and whatever. They grew up in a shitty Liverpool, hard working class city. The Stones were all middle class grammar school boys with, school outfits on and whatever. So he's kind of got a point about that, There was a world of difference in their backgrounds, big difference.
When you got a point, you got a point. And he was very elaborative on this point. Yeah, I always really respected that he was very, this is who I prefer. There was no, there's a little bit of good to both. He's just like, this is where it's at. This is why I feel. And I'm not apologizing for my statement. I'm just like, holy damn. And that attitude is something I feel like it's not just lost in music, but it's lost in a general way of life. The never back down, sticking to your convictions.
Yeah.
Never being afraid of not going where the wind blows, holding the line, standing ground. All the sayings, all the quotes, all the slogans. And it feels like he was truly one of the ones who kind of like lived up to that, who didn't just talk about, but when the going got tough, held the line on that stuff. There was no backing down from him. And Mickey D said a few months ago, who's currently in the Scorpions, might I add you, he said, yeah, if Lemmy were alive today, he would not be having a good time with this PC era. And I know he would. Like, we know Mickey. We know. But it would have been fun to have seen him shred
considering he came from the hippie era, he came to prominence with Hawkwind in that hippie era. I don't think he'd be having too good a time. They were all PC as well, but this is a different type of PC. I don't think he would be all peace and love about some of that stuff. Well, what was it he said about he didn't like Coldplay? Here's another one, the Limp Bizkit one we talked about. He said, what the fuck is this? It's just rubbish. You're just garage attendants with fucking gas masks on. If that's the future of rock and roll, it's suicide for me. That effing idiot from Limp Bizkit.
He must be talking about probably Fred Durst.
Yeah,
too.
He is.
It most likely is Fred Durst. That is too freaking funny.
Yeah.
I swear, his choice of words, it was just always glorious. And Also, this was more of like I don't know if this is true. I never heard him speak about, but kind of like I heard through the grapevine. Apparently, he didn't drive a car for the last 30 years of his existence at
Right.
all. And apparently, he always had whiskey on. Which the whiskey part, I absolutely believe. I absolutely believe the whiskey part. There's nothing that you can't tell me doesn't line up there. That he always had. I think he was a Jack Daniels guy. He was a Jack Daniels guy through and through, but not driving a single car. And apparently he had a spot at a bar. I think it was it San Diego or was it L.A.?
It was
Apparently
LA. He'd go to the Rainbow or something and just sit there.
the Rainbow. That was apparently that was his spot type of
That's
thing.
right.
It was one of those things where if he shows there, you kind of let the seat and well, guys.
Would you dare sit in that seat if you went there, knowing he might come in and sit?
If I knew he was on tour
I'd sit
and
in it.
not playing in California, oh yeah, I'd go for it. But
I'd sit in it, hoping he'd come in so I could get off and it's a chance to talk to him. Apparently, he was quite. He'd go over and play the slot machines a lot in places. He'd sit and play the slot machine. But he would talk to people. He was pretty good, supposedly. Just chat. I guess if he bugged him, he's like anybody else. But he would say hello to people. But yeah, I mean, there's the Rowdies. My pals, the Rowdies, say they hung out with him a lot back in the early 70s in London and all the bars. And he was just, like the pint and was a good lad, ordinary guy, just happened to rock.
I only knew of one guy who had actually met him talking. He actually spotted him at the Rainbow. Actually, no, sorry, I lied. Two guys. One spotted the Rainbow. The other, wait for this, he spotted him on the same airplane.
Oh God, that would have been great.
That was
I would have lived for that. I mean,
this was I think 2009. It was on the there. Well, I think it was on his way to America for the Megadeth Gigantour. Actually, he was on his way to America. And he was headed for a plane for California, and I think he is coming from a layover. And one of my boys like, Lemmy's on my plane. I was like, whoa, what? Like he took a picture from far. He didn't approach him, but he did take a picture from him. Like, yep, that's. And he was wearing his hat. Everything he wore on stage, he wore.
Well, that's fun. It's and I mean, pretty noticeable.
Well, his
didn't have stage gear.
Like
but, I mean, that was larger than life.
Judas Priest are open that what they wear on stage, that's their stuff for the stage. But they don't always dress like that. But for Lemmy, you had to always be like that.
Yeah,
always.
There's a nice shot of him with the Murder One amp and the rig that he used. That's a great shot. It's on fire as well. He's playing so loud it's on fire.
Absolutely
beautiful stuff. Yeah.
Oh, Davina's got this kind of highlight while you're showing out this grip. No more regulars at the Rainbow. Yeah, I heard about all these guys at some point, and I believe it. I mean, you got a lot of notable names. Oh, no way, dude! This is a huge comment. Yo, Nick, 70s from the Jack of All Casuals. Long time.
Oh, good to see you, mate. Yeah.
It says, I was at Motorhead's last LA concert. He did so many encores. That was when they were touring for their album Black Magic. What's called Bad Magic? No, Black Magic. Was it Bad Magic? I thought it was Black Magic. No, it was Bad Magic. It was bad.
I thought it was bad, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it's bad. Because it was actually good. And Bad Magic was good. I think Aftershock was slightly better.
I think I preferred Bad Magic was the 2015, the last one. Yeah. I think I preferred Aftershock. Bad Magic was okay, but some were just okay. But Aftershock, I think, had a few better tracks. End of Time, Queen of the Damned. It's a great track. Yeah.
Aftershock to me had that leverage of having a few extra more great songs, but Bad Magic still had some really solid bangers that I enjoyed on there.
Yeah, solid album, but I think Aftershock just had a couple more standouts for me.
Oh, that's the thing. Like Aftershock was just slam man. I mean, I'm just telling you. But dude, if that's what you call it, dude, you probably are like, whoa, like you get to carry with you that for the rest of your life, and you get to brag up, down, left, right, and center about that. That is crazy. I can't even imagine what that's like to be able to have something like where you could just brag about that.
Yeah, some real bangers on Aftershock. But I don't know if you'd be. I wanted to play. You know, I do these montages when I do my shows of the clips of bands. I did obviously we had the Motorhead show and the montage from that. It's all copyright okay. The clips, you know, it's been up on my channel for a long time. Would you be open to me just playing that?
We could do one clip of that. Yeah,
it's like a couple of minutes long, and it's a copyright okay
sure
thing.
Let's do
it. So we can get a tiny bit of music.
Why not?
Now I'll play it from because I can't seem to share actual videos, but I can play it from my YouTube.
Hey,
if that's
why
okay.
not? Let's do it.
Are you okay with that? Because
I'm
as I say,
okay with
it's
this.
not copyright claimed or anything because I very carefully edit them. So let's hear some music.
I don't hear anything.
Tell you what, give me a second.
All right. Oh, hey, were you looking at a homoerotic shot?
I had the 15 of Lemmy's greatest moments. Here we go. Sorry, I've got to play it on Edge, or you can't hear it.
Our name is Motorhead.
Can you hear that?
We play
Yes.
rock and roll.
Oh, perfect.
This was a good show that we had. Look at that. That's rock and roll.
Oh, it's filthy. Wow. Oh yeah.
Hello.
Those helmets.
Hello.
You know, when I was listening to 1916 recently, it kind of like it was like this weird feeling I had listening because not just because it's good, but 3 of the 4 members on that album are no longer with us.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
Only Phil Campbell is alive from that album.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. You can bump it up a little. Go ahead.
What a riff.
To the halfway point. I think the halfway point is a good mark. Perfect, yeah. Oh, yeah. Title track.
I can only play a couple of seconds of that.
Okay.
You guys have tried. It's the kind of place I saw them in, a theater like that.
Wow. That's incredible.
Overkill.
And Overkill's such a badass song.
I love it. I think it's possibly my favorite.
That a band said, hey, you know what? We're going to name our band because of that. Yeah. And they became Overkill, and they have 20 albums. And they're basically the Motorhead of thrash metal. Oh, that's
they had that that killer riff on Overkill. Just
so good.
Every time I hear that, even to this day, after 50 years, or I get chills, especially if it's live.
I got quick clips. So TZ Trans-Siberian Orchestra is so freaking killer. They've had great guitar players at NTSO. Like they've had guitar players from Testament, Sabotage as well. Sabotage is absolutely killer. If you don't know, seriously, if you want to hear some great like shredding, Sabotage has it. And then Jack of All Casual's comment about Judas Priest's latest concert with Sabaton as
It's
well.
the one I went to.
Yeah,
in Billings.
That's crazy. Well, Jack, just so you know, I don't know if you caught wind of it, but a little over a week ago, I did a video where I did the top 10 albums of 24 with 5 honorable mentions. If you haven't, I would suggest you please watch it after the show because we'll probably do it for like another 10 minutes. Even if you don't watch it tonight, save it for your watch later. I'm going to post it in the chat because everyone should watch this video, who hasn't, of course, because it's one of my most YouTuber videos ever. And I have to emphasize my most YouTuber because I actually do YouTuber things on there. And let me whip it on, post it in the chat. And please put on your save to watch later tab, buddy. You'll enjoy it. I promise. You'll see some familiar faces, and hopefully you'll find something that you'll like as well that you may not know about. So, and Priest is in that list as well. Oh yes, the Priest is there. And what's up, Christian? Our man Christian Delorme. You've got that vinyl revival, the vinyl revival, the vinyl revival. So okay, I will have a few more things, and then yeah, like I said, in 10 minutes we'll wrap it up. For me, and this is where we gotta be honest here, because nothing is always ever perfect. There's always be a small sliver of I'm not so sure about that. For me, the weak point, and it's not even like a terrible thing or a bad album per se, but for me, my least favorite album from Motorhead is probably going to be Down Another Day. There's some songs on there I really like. But there's definitely I'm sorry, I meant to say Another Perfect Day.
Another Perfect Day, the Brian Robertson one. Yeah. I never
But
thought Brian Robertson was the right fit for Motorhead, you know.
No.
He was great in Thin Lizzy, but
it definitely is a weaker, much weaker album. And it's unfortunate because like there's some songs on it that are really strong. So it's not a bad album per se, but man, it's just like when it was following up a series of great albums.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, how did this one come out?
Possibly their most subtle.
And the artwork's killer. The artwork's really killer. You look at that, it's a really killer. Like, I'd like to own that on wax just for the vinyl.
I think I got a picture of it somewhere. It was a little bit more, I don't know if I wouldn't say laid back, a little more subtle than some of the other stuff. I think Brian Robertson was just not the right guy. I mean, he's more of a bluesy twin lead guitar type guy, not particularly comfortable with heavy metal, you know. Not to say he's not a great guitar player. I mean, he's played some killer shit in his time, but just wasn't the right guy, I don't think. It was one of the least, probably the least good ones. Yeah, I mean, it's still okay, but I'm trying. I thought I had a picture.
What would be for you the least favorite album? What do you think was the one that you just like? You know what? This one just is not hitting.
I don't listen to a lot of the mid-90s stuff much. So I'm thinking, you know, like Bastards, Sacrifice. Okay. I don't listen to them very much. So like the mid-90s stuff, I think it picks up again by Inferno in time.
Okay.
But I'd say in terms of least, like I would never go, you know what, I'm going to go and listen to Sacrifice, which was a 1990. Okay. I would never pick that up first and listen to it.
I actually love Sacrifice. That one I actually love. Now, I'm with you on Bastards, though.
Bastards not keen. Sacrifice.
Bastards, like, once again, there's some serious bang. I remember Bastards was a really good opener. Good opener. And then kind of like, it's just like, you heard the best already after the first song.
I mean, it's supposed to be fair. On Your Feet or On Your Knees is a Bastards track.
Yes.
Born to Raise Hell's pretty good. So maybe I'm being overly critical.
But you still heard the best of it very early on.
I just wasn't that keen on the mid-90s stuff for whatever reason. I think it picked up again towards the late 90s and then the 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
I felt they were going a little bit going through the motions in the 90s, sort of 93, 95, 96. That's just me. I wouldn't say they
No.
were bad. There's still great tracks on them, but
Oh, yeah.
I don't reach for them first when I think, let's play some Motorhead, you know?
I'm with you on the era overall outside of
Mm.
Sacrifice. I feel like 92 through 97, I feel like. And I'll admit maybe Snakebite Lug gets a pass because it was my first album that I owned.
Mm.
And that, I guess you could say the sentimental attachments there because of songs like Love for Sale, the track Snakebite Love, because of Snipe My Love has that funny
Yeah.
memory. So there is that, but I've definitely heard of that album being looked at a lot less fondly compared to many other Motorhead fans. It seems I'm one of the more outspoken fans of it. I have seen a lot of people, and I didn't know. I was just kind of like a thing where maybe if I had discovered the album the way they all did, maybe I'd look at it less fondly. But because that was what I grew up with first, I had put out for me. I see it a bit differently.
I still think there's some great. There's obviously on every album there's a couple of great tracks. I mean, March or Die is one of those 90s albums I go, I've never picked up since, I haven't played that in years. But it has got Hellraiser on it, which was the Ozzy thing, the Ozzy Osbourne thing. That's a pretty good track. But I mean, I can't think of any other tracks on that, to be honest, apart from the title track, March or Die. But, so it would just be, they'd be like, yeah, that was okay. Whereas some of them are stone cold classics. That one's like, it's just okay, you know.
Yeah. So okay, Primark Vulcan for $4.99 says, since we're sharing stories, my first exposure to Lemmy was Ace of Spades being on the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 soundtrack, and I bought the album. Oh, there's two of them. So it's a part 1 and then part 2 for another $4.99. Says the album stayed in my CD case for years until I watched Razorfist's Metal Mythos on Motorhead, and now I own their entire studio discography.
Well played.
Damn.
I'd love to get there's a big box set of them on vinyl. I'd love to get.
That is incredible. Primark, thank you for the basically $10. That's incredible, and that's a great story. Yeah, dude, we were talking earlier before you got here. The Tony Hawk. That for me, I thought it was 2, but I guess it was 3. That I had shut off the entire soundtrack, and that was the one song that I had on there. That's absolutely mind blowing that happens. I don't know if I can't remember if you did catch it too, Primark, but if you haven't, watch my best of 2024 list. There's a lot of great classic metal on there, not just in my top 10, but also in my honorable mentions as well. And there might be a hidden there might be something new in there you haven't heard that you might like as well. I don't know if some of you caught it yet. But it was a fun video to make. I had so much fun making it. It was so good. I'm trying to think here. Do I have anything else I want to cover from our man here? Oh, yes. I have 3 other quotes. And these are great ones because we could go on for days. We'll definitely have to do for 10 years. We're going to just call it part 2 because we could do another hour and a half easy. But another one from Lemmy was, I don't see why there should be a point where everyone decides you're too old. I'm not too old. And until I decide I'm too old, I'll never be too fucking old.
Yeah, I mean, I admire that point of view. As I get older, I wish I could live up to it. But then again, I'm not Lemmy. So.
He was a spry man. He was spry.
Yeah.
Even up until the day he died. And then that was a great time. The summer of 71. I can't remember it, but I'll never forget it.
No, that I can relate to. I can relate to that. I had a great night last night. Why? What did you do? I don't know, but it was great. You know, that kind of.
There's another one with I heard about how do I believe the CIA killed John Kennedy? Well, he is dead, isn't he?
That's right.
That's
not the expected answer either, but Unexpected.
No, I didn't expect that one. Okay. Oh, what's the last one? Death is an inevitability, isn't it? You become more aware of that when you get to my age. I don't worry about it. I'm ready for it. When I go, I want to go doing what I do. If I died tomorrow, it's been good.
Mm.
You know, I
He
think he
had a
actually
good
said it like a year or
philosophical.
two before he had left the planet. He had said that a year or two before he left the planet. Like it was like one of those things where he realizes, hey, mortality is real. That kind of like sank in for him later on, but he realized, hey, you know what? It's been fun, and I don't need to think about it negatively. He still had a very positive way of looking at things. Even though he had a very tough as nails
He's,
approach to things, he still was very positive.
he
And
seemed
I feel
quite
like that gets
philosophical,
overlooked.
yeah, which is not what you'd expect. But yeah, I always found him an interesting guy. He
Mm-hmm.
was not. He wasn't some yob, as we would say. He wasn't some thug or a yob. He was a rough and ready rocker, but he was quite philosophical. Like many other people of his era, so born in the 50s or late 40s or 50s and growing up, he actually at that time, even for a working class kid, you'd still get a good education. So born in 45, so you can hear that he doesn't sound like a yob when he's talking. He's quite well spoken, So
Mm-hmm.
whereas now they don't teach them shit in schools, but then there was a proper education system written. So he's actually quite well spoken, and
Mm-hmm.
he could articulate stuff quite well, especially when he was taking the piss out of people.
Yeah, I mean, taking the piss out of people, but he also knew how to clear. He
Mm,
loved to live his life, and he lived it. And he also had a way of not just surrounding himself or let's just say not living in a bubble. Like we
yeah.
all heard about Dave Mustaine's changing of his life in the early 2000s,
Hmm.
the same way he had an Alice Cooper style change of life, and he's just like, no, hey, he goes his way, I go my way. That's just it. He
Yeah.
didn't knock him, but he didn't praise. That's just him. That's it, man. Like there doesn't need to be a thing about it. Like, and you know what? That's true individualism right there.
Yeah. And like many British men of his era, he wasn't afraid to dress up as a woman, according to Tomi Iommi, who said Lemmy once came into his dressing room with a birthday cake for him, but he was wearing a black dress, stockings, and high heels and makeup. And he said, did I fancy him? You're joking. It was still Lemmy. So, like all British rockers of his era, he could dress up as a woman.
You crazy Brits. You crazy Brits
Yeah,
pulling off that weirdness that I will not do.
I know.
Also about the warts.
The
The warts.
warts. Yes.
He has been asked about would he remove them? Has he thought about it? He has considered it. But one of the things is apparently he's gotten a lot of ladies because of them. Imagine
Yeah.
that.
Well, it's distinctive. It stands out. So
Apparently many ladies have tried to go for the licks on them. I'm sure you'd have to brush your tongue with your toothbrush for a week, but
I mean, just the thought of licking Lemmy in general is pretty dangerous. But
right, that's like licking the floor of a bar.
yeah, it's like,
Or,
do you really want to go there? No.
yeah, it's true. It's apparently it's really true. So, hi, Stephen Mack. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
guys, that was the life and times and story of one Lemmy Kilmeister. Something tells me we'll have to do this again for the 10-year because this is fun. We could
We
easily
will.
do another hour and a half on
Ian
this.
Fraser Kilmeister.
Ian
Fraser
Fraser
Kilmeister,
Kilmeister.
better known as Lemmy.
Oh, look
Legend.
at that.
Legend.
The Jack of all casuals for $4.99 says, first time I heard of Motorhead is through the WWF. Made two of Triple H's entrance theme songs. Better songs out there, but those are at the top for me. Hey, no, I get it. It was a good entryway for a lot of people. I more or less is when I talk about the beginning of the show, where that came from, because I didn't know it was an actual band to me. It was just some guy yelling at a mic. And I learned when at WrestleMania 2001. Oh, hold up, that was an actual band. Yeah, I talked
Wasn't
about it in
just
the beginning.
any actual band. It was one of the actual bands.
It was right. It was the band, but
yeah, it's so influential. It's hard to fathom that there's certain bands in history that have been hugely influential, both in general or to their genre. Motorhead are one of those handful of bands. More so, perhaps, me being a Brit, their influence there was enormous. Like the impact was huge when they hit their peak. It's like there was no other band like it, you know. So
no.
anyway,
thank you, Jack of all casuals. Appreciate it. Yes, guys, this has been fun, but all good things do come in end. And also, knowing me, I don't like to overstay our welcome. I want to keep things while they're riding high and we're still enjoying the show. But if you are coming in later on, catch the early portion. I promise it's good. We've had a very fun time doing the show.
yes,
I do want to thank 70s for partaking in this with me. It's been very fun. I think I'm already thinking about next year for part 2. We'll make it even more fun.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
We'll bring the boys on.
Bring the boys on
here as well.
Show off some more images.
Yeah, do some more tunes
where he's mocking people or celebrating people.
Yeah,
he was always a fun interview subject. It's just nice to do tributes stuff like this. A lot of YouTube channels are about what things that people don't like because there's so much shit around now. It's to just pay tribute to something that we love.
And that's why we did tonight.
Yeah.
And that's why we did tonight. So once again, chat, I'm gonna post this here in the chat. This is my link to the top 10 albums of 2024, along with 5 honorable mentions. Hopefully you'll find at least one new thing that you'll like out of it. Watch if you have. If you've already watched it, you've already done your part. That's all I've got to plug on that side, outside of Clobby's Comic Shop Friday nights. I'll be in Midnight's Edge After Dark later this week. Member stream Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Central. I can't wait for it. All members get to come on the show. And Toxic Tuesday will be back January 7th to talk Denzel Washington's training day. But until then, I'm going to let that 70s rock fan plug his plug on the way out. So 70s, what do you got coming out?
Not got a huge amount to plug right now. I got a couple of last 2 or 3 videos about Korean stuff, Korean TV shows and movies. A few more of those to make because I'm heavily into that stuff now. I'll probably be doing a little video about this beauty, which is the complete season 1 of Blake 7, classic 1970s British shaky background scenery science fiction. Yvonne Lives. So I got this the other day. This is my Christmas treat to myself. Blu-rays of the of Blake 7. So I'll probably do a little something about that. Next live show on my channel won't be till Monday, January the 6th, and it'll be a Canon Film Club about the movie America 3000, which is a bit of a laugh. But there'll be other stuff in between now and then, I'm sure. Thank you, Nick, for having me, mate. It's always a pleasure to hang out with Lemmy's son.
The pleasure is all mine to hang out with that 70s rock fan and just have a one-on-one talking about my dad.
Just you and me. You're going one-on-one. It's great hanging out with you, mate.
It's good hanging out with you. All right.
We should do it more often. Well, we do every Tuesday night.
Yeah, we do. I guess we got to do it more. Not to make it sound more homoerotic, but I guess we got to do it more. But chat, thank you for being here, guys. This is the end. This is goodbye. This is good fight.
Keep on rocking.
Lastly, but not leastly, they were Motorhead. They played rock and roll. Goodbye. Good fight. Good night. Okay? Cheers, beers.
There's no sense in going off half-cocked.
Oh my God, the cock.
sexual discrimination.